Now that you have completed a formative about the Jim Crow South, you are going to be completing a summative. Now for your summative, you will also be doing analysis, but instead of writing an essay, you will be given a short presentation. Let's review the expectations of this assignment. The question that your presentation will answer is, how does the author use the book to influence children's understanding of the time period? We started this project off with the question of whether you think adults should tell children the truth about historical events. Now you will use the children's book you read for the last assignment to answer the question above. How does the book you read influence how children might understand the Jim Crow South? The first thing that you want to do is to work your way through each section of the planning sheet. Let's take a look at it very quickly. Your planning sheet looks like this. It has several steps for you to follow. The first thing that you're going to do is analyze your book to answer the question. Since you've already read the book, this should be easy. Just do some thinking. What lesson do you think the author wants children to learn about the Jim Crow South from the picture book you read? After you've come up with an answer to that question, you're going to move on to step 2 and give your reason. What is one reason that you think the book teaches this lesson? Was it some of the words that you read in the book? Was it how the character reacted to things? The pictures? Next, you have to identify and explain your evidence. You need at least 2 pieces of evidence from your book that support your claim. You have to explain how your evidence proves that children are learning the lesson you explained in step 1. After you've done that, you need to complete step 4 and prepare for your presentation. You need to come up with an interesting way to start and end your presentation. Then you want to create some note cards or other notes to have with you while you are presenting. Finally, you want to practice your presentation. Make sure you read through it out loud at least a few times before presenting. Now, presentations will be this Thursday. There are no exceptions to this. Of course, if you're absent, we will find a makeup day. It is a summative grade. So what does your presentation have to have? So I am listening for a perceptive analysis of the book. It shouldn't be boring. You shouldn't say, my book teaches children about segregation. All of the books teach that. You need to come up with something creative that your book teaches children that maybe nobody else has thought of. How do you do this when you're presenting? Well, you have to have a hook, just like you do when you're writing an essay. When you're giving a formal speech, you want to start off with something that will interest people. Ask them a question, tell them a story. Then you want to give your claim and clearly answer the question of how the author influences young children with the book. You have to give one reason for your claim, at least 2 pieces of evidence that support your reason, and an explanation of how your evidence supports your reason. You should see that all of these things line up with the paper you're going to work on. Finally, you need a wrap-up statement. When you end your presentation, you don't just want to say thank you and walk off. You want to leave the listeners with something to think about, a question to ask themselves, or something that they should go do. I recorded an example presentation for you to show you what I'm looking for. Let's listen to it.
Books can open kids' imaginations, but also teach them important things. In this book, Boycott Blues, How Rosa Parks Inspired a Nation, the author wants children to understand that the civil rights movement couldn't have happened without strong leaders. The reason this is clear is because the book shows well-known people and lesser-known people leading others. For example, it says that Dr. King said that we should fight until justice runs down like a mighty stream. And fight we did. We fought a quiet fight, no slingshots, no weapons, not even spitballs. We fought with our feet. This evidence proves that strong leaders were important to the civil rights movement because it shows the people being inspired by Dr. King. Another example in the book is when they were boycotting the bus. The author wrote, "When I saw somebody start to go down that road, when I heard somebody say, 'What's the use? I'm paying my dime to ride,' I played my guitar as loud as I could to drown out Jim Crow's peck, 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 to stir up a rhythm worth following, to somehow soften those boycott blues. This shows a regular person who encouraged the other people around him by playing his guitar while they were boycotting the bus. So instead of giving up, they stuck with it." Both of these pieces of evidence prove that the author wants children to understand how important strong leaders were to the civil rights movement. Maybe this weekend you can use this book to teach a child about strong leaders. Thank you.
As you heard in the presentation, all of these things were evident. There was a hook. I asked and reminded everybody that books help children learn. Then I made my claim about how strong leaders were necessary in the civil rights movement. I gave a reason that the book shows both famous leaders and not so famous leaders. My first piece of evidence was a famous leader and how he helped convince people to participate in the civil rights movement, which proves my claim. My second piece of evidence was about a lesser-known leader that also helped convince people to participate in the civil rights movement. Finally, with my wrap-up, I gave you something to do. I said you should read this book to a kid this weekend. You could also consider asking a question or leaving the listeners with something to think about. These are the things that I am listening for in your presentation. But I also want your claim to be well thought out to get the best grade. So, you're ready to get started on it. The first thing that you need to do is take your book analysis summative paper and start working your way through the steps. You have today and tomorrow to prepare for this presentation. We will be starting presentations at the beginning of class on Thursday.